Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It is March the 18th, and this is a meeting of the Early Childhood Subcommittee. I'll remind some of you who are new to us, if you're a advocate who is online with us here, you're here if we need you for information. We're not testimony. Voluntary testimony isn't part of the subcommittee meeting system. And if you would keep those of you who are them, if you would keep your cameras off, it helps to keep the members up where I can see them. I see some of them have their cameras off too. As Delegate Wilkins politely informed us, she's going to be putting food in her face, so she doesn't want us to necessarily see that. And I just appreciate her care with us there. So we started this yesterday morning, and we got into a little bit of confusion. So I want to get this straightened out. We have two bills before us, and we're going to try to put them into one bill. We're going to amend them together. They are House Bill 467 and House Bill 1305. Both of these bills generally seek to create pathways for Montessori schools, both public Montessori schools and private ones that want to participate in the mixed delivery system, pathways for them to better be able to participate, perhaps make it a little easier for them. To that end, these bills have a few things that we will change if possible for Montessori schools so that they may in fact find it possible or easier to participate in the mixed delivery system or be part of the pre-K programs in the state. Right now, a school that is a public Montessori school, there are charters, and these are the ones the Delegate Branch spoke about with yesterday and brought them to our attention. I believe that's kind of the impetus behind the 467 bill. They currently, in order to have a teacher teach at their schools, if they're a public school, that teacher has to be trained in the Montessori system. There are 3 different things that they could do. They don't have to do them all. But then they also have to get state certification at the same time to teach there. And so their request is that we change their requirement that if they're only going to teach in that Montessori setting, that they could be certified to teach there as part of our public pre-K system with only that and not the state certification. This would not then permit them to go and teach this is not state certification, it will be certification in that Montessori setting only. The private schools also feel that because of the fact that Montessori schools teach cross-graded, and if I understand correctly, they sort of do 3 through 5. That's one of the mixes they do, which includes kindergarten then. They are looking at, there are different requirements for square footage and different requirements for classroom ratios for them. I'm going to let Alistair tell you what the current requirements are for those 2 things, and we can come back to the certification. And then if you tell what their current ratios are, what they adhere to legitimately, and also what their square foot requirements are. And then what we're proposing, which are very nearly equal, but slightly relaxed for them. Go on, Alistair.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So as the good delegate said, the first bill is about credentialing. The second bill is about allowing these schools to participate in both the pre-K expansion grant that was part of the blueprint and the mixed delivery system. And under both those programs, there must be a ratio of 1 to 10 for teacher and staff to students at the pre-K level, and no more than 20 students per class. Because these Montessori schools are not just pre-K schools, however, we're allowing a little bit more flexibility. So what the amendments would do is allow for up to 25 students, you could have 1 teacher and 1 teacher's aide, presuming that you have a mixed system, meaning that you have...
Let me stop you. Teacher's aides also need to be trained. They also get certified. It's not like just a substitute teacher of sorts.
That's right. And both of these programs have specific requirements for those teacher's aides. They must have a high school degree and meet other qualifications. So yes, thank you for that, sir. So if you have a mixed school, you would be able to have up to 25 students to a ratio of 2, and up to 35 students between 25 and 35, exclusive of the 25, with a ratio of 1 teacher and 2 aides.
So this puts the ratio in the 12-to-1 range, not exactly 12 and a half in one case, and a little less than 12 in the other case, in the larger classroom, which is slightly higher. But again, we don't have a exclusively pre-K setting here, which is where the 10-to-1 comes from.
And then the other change would be under current regulations, with some exceptions. You have to have a student to square foot ratio of 1 student per 35 square feet in childcare settings. Because that's for younger kids to have more space to play. Because again, because these schools are mixed between young kids and slightly older kids. In the Montessori setting, they need a ratio of 1 to 30 instead. So this would also allow those schools that have a ratio of 1 to 30 to be eligible for these grants. The area square foot ratio was never part of the blueprint, and those requirements weren't in there, but they are in regulation. And so this would supersede that regulation for these specific schools and allow them to participate.
And then the training would be the same in both settings, right? We would allow the training to be Montessori, and they have to have a bachelor's degree in any subject area. And that would qualify them to be certified to teach as a teacher in a pre-K setting at what would be considered a state school, private, accepting state funds, or a public school.
That's right.
Okay. So are there any other details we've missed now? Sorry, I see that Delegate Branch has a question. If you think you're done, we can take that from her. You're muted.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I think so. Sorry, I forgot the qualifications, slight change in qualifications.
Sorry. Okay, Delegate Branch.
Thank you, Alistair. So my question still is, how will this affect the schools in Baltimore City who doesn't have that particular ratio in their criteria already? How will that affect them? Because they don't have the 1 to 25 or the 1 to 35. It's not a part of their current.
What ratio have you been informed that they use? Maybe we can ask someone. Who do we have here that can maybe answer that question? Okay, Ms. Surratt, would you like to weigh in on that for us, please?
Yes, sir. I am Dewana with Baltimore City Schools. We're just concerned, and maybe because we're not clear about the way the pre-K expansion grant works, but if there's the 1 to 25, it's a square feet analysis that we weren't quite sure about for the public charter school. We're concerned that essentially the charter school, which is a public school, would have a different criteria than other public schools in the same district. So that's basically the premise of all of our questions, why there would be this sort of 2-tier system.
Okay, so when the Montessori schools function in Baltimore City, are they multi-graded also 3, 4, 5 at least? Pre-K and K?
We have one full Montessori school that does have mixed use, but then we also have another traditional school that has a Montessori program within it. So it's not a full Montessori school, and they may have mixed grades.
Yeah, I think the problem is this bill is focused on schools that are fully Montessori here. I think the others would continue doing what they do there if you have a Montessori type classroom, but their teachers I would believe would also have to be certified more fully, since they're in a public school setting that has other classes as well.
Right, but I wasn't quite sure because the way the bill is written, it says Montessori school or program.
Okay, so that's an excellent point, and thank you. So, Alistair, I believe the original intent was to take schools that were fully Montessori and allow this. So, is there a way that let's add that in as a potential amendment and see if anybody wants to carve that out at this point? Okay, so we're talking about charters that are fully Montessori, and we're talking about private schools that are also. Do the charters, Mr. do the charters actually adhere to those the Montessori class sizes that because we borrowed those from Montessori numbers, the 25 to 2 and the 35 to 1 to 3, excuse me. And
Can I-
Alistair, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, can I just clarify before we go down this route? This is not mandating anything. This is just saying that in order to be eligible for particular grants that are provided under the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, the pre-K expansion grant or the mixed delivery system, you have to meet these requirements. It's not saying that if you're a charter school in the state, you are out of line now with new laws or anything like that. It's just saying to be eligible for this pot of money, under current law, you can't be eligible for it because of the current ratio of the definition of childcare and regulations and the statutory definition of limits on class size and limits on the number of personnel to children. This is saying if you're a Montessori program with slightly different characteristics, then you can be eligible for those things. So we're not mandating this for.
But let's clarify something, because this was something the expansion grants and the other, I forget the other term right now, but they're really for private schools to participate, right? Public schools don't actually, do they apply for expansion grants also?
They can, yes.
Okay.
It's for a county board or a private institution that has a memorandum of understanding with and same is true with the mixed delivery system. It could be provided by the county board or by a private institution.
So this is the question now. Would it be adequate for us to focus these on the ones that are fully Montessori? They would be able to qualify for expansion grants if they can meet these three, if they can meet these three loosened conditions for them. And I see some hands up. Wendy Schenk, I see your hand up. Can you tell me where you're from, please? And are you answering one of our questions right now?
Yes, I'm with the Montessori Public Policy Initiative. I'm also a Maryland resident.
So which question are you going to clarify for us here?
There's a few different questions to clarify. So regarding your kind of whether it's full Montessori schools or programs, the language schools or programs was intentional because a Montessori classroom that's within another conventional school still has the same needs for the classroom to operate the way all the classrooms in a full Montessori school would. So that language was intentional to make sure that all Montessori classrooms within the state can access the changes that we're discussing today. And then I wanted to clarify that the 467 was not solely related to pre-K, and I just wasn't sure if that was clear, that this was for pathway to teacher licensure for Montessori educators teaching in public Montessori schools, whether it's early childhood or K-12. And then the other thing I wanted to just point out is that in COMAR, there are exceptions for Montessori schools that the Maryland State Department of Education granted because they recognize the need for higher ratios and larger group sizes in Montessori classrooms. So currently under COMAR, Montessori schools that are validated, that is, they are recognized as fully implementing a Montessori curriculum, are allowed to have up to 32 children with 2 adults in the classroom.
Again, I don't think that this bill is changing any requirements under who can operate. What it is doing is changing the statutory requirements about who can receive funding under the pre-K expansion grant and the mixed delivery system, which those schools, because of their different ratio of teachers to students, would not currently qualify for.
And I understand that 467 wanted to change this across the board. I'd say I think that's a very big ask. I think for us to be adjusting it at the pre-K level instead of third, fourth, and fifth grades was not really one of our goals at the beginning of all this. I believe that when we took these bills on, we felt like we were adjusting things for a pre-K program where we want them to be more able to participate in the pre-K. Does anybody have anything else to say? I feel like we're kind of stuck here. We may have to actually, have to put this away until another year because we're getting a lot of information. Anybody want to weigh in? Does anybody, I really need a little help on this one right now from somebody on the committee if anybody wants to say something. All right. So I don't really, I feel like we're being asked several different things at once here. And I feel like we're not well focused on what we're actually going for in this particular case. Yes, Delegate Branch, thank you for rescuing me.
So to my understanding, because this would not be mandatory for Baltimore City, correct? It's not making anything mandatory.
That's correct, Delegate.
So then I think that it will work for us. So it's no problem with the Baltimore City schools as I see the issues that I had before. So I don't,
Okay.
I don't want you to hold it up on
Okay.
behalf of me asking those questions.
So Alistair, let's review what we have in front of us. What does this bill do? Let's go back and make sure we understand what it's doing
Yes,
and,
okay.
and that we're satisfied with that.
The first bill, 467, unamended and as left in place under these amendments, would allow for Montessori schools, public Montessori school credentialing to occur from these three listed organizations with some other standards in place that the teacher would have to have a bachelor's degree and
This
so
would
on.
be
That would,
beyond pre-K. This would be for
for any public Montessori schools. Additionally, the bill would expand eligibility for two blueprint funding programs, the pre-K expansion grant and the mixed delivery system. And it would allow for you not to have the exact teacher ratio that those bills required, nor the exact credential requirements of those programs. Rather, you could have accreditation from one of these three Montessori programs or and a bachelor's degree. I apologize.
So what I think I would like to do here is I would like these bills both to focus on credentialing and size and that for qualifying for the expansion grants. I would like to go that direction with this right now. If indeed, I know that it might have been the intent of the sponsor of the lower numbered bill to have it apply across the board. But one of the reasons we took an interest in this bill, I believe as a legislature, is because we were aware that capacity for pre-K is, we're having some trouble with that, with enough capacity for the pre-K that we want to offer across the state. And we're looking for partners, and Montessori could be one. Also, this would allow at least the Montessori schools to credential their pre-K and kindergarten teachers to teach with a slightly adjusted and easier pathway for them to be credentialed to teach in those rooms. And I think I'd like to stick there right now. I think the other one is a bigger swing for us right now. And I'm willing to listen to opinions on that. But if not, I think I'm going to move that we have an amendment that focuses it there for now. I think we have a much larger thing to consider if we're going to change our credentialing for the other classrooms. All right. Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern always has been the student to child ratio in these programs, and just hearing from, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, the person from Montessori that just spoke. She mentioned 1 to 32, 2 to 32, which just absolutely would not be okay.
Excuse me for one second, Delegate.
So my
Excuse
question.
me for 1 second. Ms. Anselm, I'm going to ask you to turn off your camera when you're not recognized. Thank you.
Right. Thank
All right,
you.
go
So
ahead.
my
I'm sorry, Delegate Guyton. But
my question is where we are right now with this bill. Where are we with that ratio? I mean, my preference has always been that preschools across the board should have this recommended ratio that the rest of the schools have for Office of Child Care certification. But if certainly we want something less than 2 to 32. So where are we right now with that?
The number that we landed on when we tried to find a middle ground since there were some older students was about 12.5 to 1. 2 staff members for up to 25 students, and 3 then beyond that up to 35 students. So actually 2 to 25 is 12 and a half. 3 to 35 is actually less than 12. It's 11 and something. So that's where we are right now.
Okay, and I really appreciate that. I guess my question would be, is there a safeguard there if, for instance, for whatever reason, and I understand the idea behind Montessori is the mixed age groups, but let's say they don't have them mixed age groups. Let's say they don't have the kindergartners. Is there a possibility then, the way this is written, that you would have, could possibly have, 25 to 2 actual preschoolers in this classroom?
Sure.
Can we safeguard against that?
Let me let someone who runs a private school weigh in on that real quickly. Ellie Lichtash, would you like to comment on that, please? That question?
Sorry, I didn't hear the full question.
That's all right. There was a lot. The question is that if we're basing the higher ratio on the concept that we have a mixed classroom of students of various ages, that would it be possible, could it happen that all 25 students would be 3 and 4 year olds and you would have a higher ratio with them?
In practice, we can't run such a classroom. So if we have only 3 and 4, it will be under 20. And then only then we can raise. We have to have the kindergartners
Encouraging.
to have a larger amount of children. Otherwise, it would not function as a Montessori classroom. So in practical terms, we can't do that.
Also, additionally, I would let you know that the language of the amendment, it requires that you have a mixed classroom. So that is an answer to that question from the legal perspective.
Okay, thank you. So that could not happen under this bill. Is that the definitive answer? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so I have 2 people. I need to know if you're Marilyn Horan, I don't know where you're from, and I need to know if you're answering a specific question.
I am the principal at Frederick at Carroll Creek Montessori School.
Thank you.
And so I could give you some real perspective on class size and certification both.
Well, this is not testimony. This has to be an answer to someone's question. I mean, we're not at a hearing here. We're doing some
correct.
decision
So
making.
the answer to the question of class size, we currently have 26 students as our class size. So our schools would not be able to receive any of that money.
Because you would only have 2 teachers in a classroom of 26.
Well, we have 1 teacher and 1 assistant.
And so you would only have 2 people. So I understood that the ratio was 12 to 1. So I'm not clear how you do that.
Well, we are on the Excel's rating scale. We are at level 5 because they understand that Montessori has a different kind of pedagogy and the leadership that the children then bring with that. So as a level 5 Excel Maryland school, the state of Maryland already recognizes that we have larger class sizes.
All right. There are too many moving pieces here today, folks. I'm going to take this one off the table for right now. We may have another meeting if I can get a few questions answered. I appreciate your time and sorry that we didn't make it through it today. We're not quite there. Thank you all very much.